he said it just, yeah, I just had to copy the link. I couldn't copy the box that was sent out, I had to copy the link. I had to go to it and copy the link, but, cause this doesn't have anything, I think I need a new computer that this takes like 20 minutes to come up. We have issues with the mouse, it locks it out.
Is this a leased computer from ABM?
No, I think this is one we purchased for the specific reasons. This was gonna be for the office or specifically our use. And then we have the other one that's for committee use.
Well, which,
And I don't know what
Give us
his
a
is.
copy
This
of the
is
presentation.
county one.
Richard had asked
That one's
that
not connected
for
with
the
email
email
either.
to, or emailed to us before this meeting. But I didn't see that come through. So they had said they were gonna have this person, and then Richard said, "Can you all get one of them?" So
We didn't get one.
I didn't see one.
I got a copy when I went in.
Oh, that's a refresh.
I'll go ask her.
Right, just keep.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be helpful.
Todd,
yes.
did Amber mention to you, I brought up to her, we didn't increase the entertainment budget.
We did,
Did
since
you?
then. Yes,
Okay,
thank you
good.
for pointing that out. Good
Yeah, I
catch.
just- when I
Good
was
catch.
signing checks yesterday. it was
Well,
like-
and so since
We added
then,
$200 a month in entertainment.
yeah, no, we are, and, since then, because, you know, we were talking about increase. Nudged up based on that and one other
rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again.
A little bit of a lag here.
A little lag.
I didn't know Grace was gonna be here today,
Good morning. Agenda, Pine Mountain Club Property Owners Association, Inc., Board of Directors, Special Draft Budget Open Meeting, Saturday, March 9th, 2024, 8 a.m., Place Condor Room. Call to order, Cam Acosta.
Here.
Richard Ballard.
Here.
Mark Bailey.
Here.
Jennifer Emmett.
Here.
Philip Gabriel. Carolyn Gilbert present. Brad Hudson.
Here.
Bill Lewis, too.
Here.
Ellen McCullen.
Here.
Adopt the agenda. Resolve the agenda for the Board of Directors Special Open Draft Budget Meeting of March 9th, 2024 adopted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jennifer. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Budget discussion, draft budget discussion.
And again, just to let you know, we're going to have our manager talk to us here, but again, out as probably you're looking at the screen right up there. Lose my As we do that, we'll just go ahead and jump into it, and I'll let you guys take over.
And you guys, the board members will all want to move out so you can follow the screen. Unless you want to, you can follow along in your hard copy if you prefer, but Amber's going to speaking that direction.
Because this is okay. Oh, no, I did see that. Did you see that? Yeah, let me see if I, oh, okay, I have it. You kept the 67. So this is good, this is the other. Booyah! Here.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to everybody here and online. My name is Amber Shepard. I am the accounting manager here at PMC. For the agenda today, we will have the 2024-2025.
Amber, can you?
Is it? Is that better? Okay. The agenda today will have the 2024-2025 budget presentation, followed by board discussion, as well as questions and answers regarding the 2024-2025 budget proposal. So our budget proposal for 24-25 will be presented today, March 9th, 2024, by myself, Amber Shepard, the accounting manager, and Todd Greisen, the general manager. With discussion on the budget, I want to take a moment to read our mission statement. The Pine Mountain Club Property Owners Association will provide high-quality services to its members and continually improve its organizational, operations, and capital assets while maintaining fiscal responsibility. It will protect the intimacy and mutual respect of the community's small village atmosphere and practice sound stewardship in conserving the surrounding natural environmental resources. While going through the budget process, we strive to make sure that we were in line with our mission statement. 2024-2025 budget factors. We wanted to ensure that we maintain member services at current high standards. Department budgets are based on overall planned services to be provided and required staff to do so. Funding the reserve to ensure the future of our association. This will eliminate major financial spending in the future budgets. Projects needed to ensure safety within the association and improve amenities for the benefit of its members. 2024-2025 budget preparations. We researched 2024-2025 overall economic factors
Always lagging. It's always gonna lag.
that will be, that are needed to prepare the budget. Discuss future pricing with our major vendors. Calculate the pro forma for the current year, which means the projection or forecasted, by using a run rate of 7 months of actual data and 5 months estimated for income and expenses. So to calculate pro forma, we use an Excel spreadsheet to take each budget line item and pull the actual numbers from July through January. We added those numbers together and divided it by the number of months, which was 7, which gave us our monthly average. And at that point, we multiplied it by 12 to give us our pro forma or projection for the year. For line items where the budget is spent in the beginning of the year, we did not use this formula though, because if I did, it would skew the numbers and it would not give us an accurate representation. We reviewed income and expense line items with each individual department head. So managers were able to give their input on their department. We looked at the past years and current year actual numbers to discuss what was needed to maintain the services currently provided. Worked with the budget working group by reviewing all budget lines to prepare the initial draft budget. 2024-2025 budget assumptions. 3% minimum wage merit increase. California Labor Code 1182.12 requires the state to determine annually if a minimum wage should be adjusted for inflation. The California Department of Finance is responsible for reviewing the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics for that data. One projection of the minimum wage law is an annual review of the wage rate using the U.S. Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, also known as the CPI-W. From January 2023 to January 2024, the CPI-W increased 3.1%. 10% for health insurance increases and 8% for general insurance increase, and that is according to analysis done by our brokers. A 23% increase in electricity. Southern California Edison approved a 9% rate increase taking effect 2024, as well as they filed a general rate case application with the California Public Utilities Commission requesting an increase of 22.6% over the course of 2024. We follow the budget policy E14 budget process line. On February 6th, the budget working group met. We met again on February 14th. On February 21st, the first initial draft budget was sent to the Condor. On February 22nd, the budgeting working group met again, where updates were made to the draft, which will be presented here today. Today, March 9th, is the special open board budget meeting. On March 13th, the budget will be reviewed by the Budget and Finance Committee. March 16th, open board meeting for final direction on establishing the 2024-2025 annual assessment. On March 20th, a couple things are going to happen. The draft budget line item detail will be available in the office, and the latest summary draft budget will be sent to the Condor. Now, it won't be published in March in the Condor. That will come out the beginning of April, but a copy will be available in the office. The final budget working group meeting will be determined at a later date. April 17th, the Budget and Finance Committee will meet for a final review of the proposed budget. On April 20th, the open board meeting where the board will approve the budget. And May 1st through the 5th, we will print and mail out the 2024-2025 fiscal year assessment packets to the homeowners. Pulling the historical data of PMC assessments, you can see on this graph, the blue bars represent the annual assessment in dollars, where the orange line represents the percentage increase each year of the assessment. As you can see, the last 15 years, increases are under 10%. Down below, you can see the 2022 Surrounding Area Association assessment averages. We looked into associations in the surrounding areas to get an idea of where we fell with them. So this data from 2022 shows the averages. Los Angeles, an annual of $4,392, which would be a monthly of $366. San Francisco, an annual of $4,680 for $390 a month. The national single-family homes, the annuals are $2,400 to $3,600 annual and $200 to $300 monthly. So because this is 2022 data, I pulled the PMC POA assessments from 2022, and the annual was $1,788 for a monthly of $149.
So I'm going to add just a couple comments about these numbers you're looking at for averages. It could be argued that it's not apples to apples. You look at LA and San Francisco numbers, and yeah, probably those are homeowners associations, and many of those are going to be condominium associations, which we are not. So, and they have typically, having managed one of those before in the San Francisco Bay Area, those typically have far more components that the association has to maintain. And therefore, those are going to be some higher costs for that type of association to manage. However, also that comes with those condominium associations and typical HOA, they don't have anywhere near the amenities we have here. Excuse me. So, keep that in mind as you think about these comparisons. Now, so what is more logical to compare us to would be that national number for single-family homes. That's going to be more in line with what we are here at Pine Mountain Club. But even in that scenario, again, as Amber pointed out, these are 2022 numbers. But even in that scenario, have fallen, and we believe continue to fall well below national averages for association costs, against other associations having single-family homes. So. Again, those 2022 numbers, PMC was charging $149 monthly or $1,788 in our annual assessments. So these are just some good, some good things to bear in mind as we go through further into today's numbers. We'll have time for Q&A later. Go ahead.
Okay, so here we can see a comparison of the PMC POA assessment percentage increase, inflation rate percent increase, and consumer price index percent increase each fiscal year. CPI, consumer price index, reflects how the prices of specific items such as food, clothing, and housing change relative to the base period. CPI is widely used to monitor inflation and adjust various economic factors. On the chart, the blue bar represents the PMC percent of assessment increase. Orange is the California average percent inflation rate, and the green is the percent change in CPI. You can see that the fiscal year from 2010-2011 to 2013-2014, there was no PMC assessment increase. But there was an increase in inflation and CPI. There were also years where the assessment increase was below inflation percent, resulting in higher assessment increases the following years to catch up with inflation and the cost increases.
I'd like to actually add something to what Amber just discussed there, and you also look at these numbers back in 2020. Again, the association, the board members chose not to increase assessments that year. And most everyone, I'm sure, will remember what was happening about this time that year. We were all faced with COVID, and there were so many unknowns. And I can speak, I wasn't here at that time, but the board I worked for back in that time did the exact same thing that Pine Mountain Club did, and that was the board chose not to raise assessments because there were so many unknowns. So again, to the point that Amber was making, because of not increasing assessments that year, and frankly, I think it was a wise decision with all the unknowns we all had back in that time, and it was very common for associations not to increase assessments that particular year. But again, you got to play catch up when you don't do that. When you don't raise dues, it results in, you know, catching up in subsequent years.
This is an overview of our current budget and projected totals for the year, as well as our budget for the next year. As you can see, for the 2023-2024, the revenue budget was $6,677,852. We are projected to be at $6,868,763 by the end of the year, giving us a better than budget $190,911. For the expenses, the 2023-2024 budget was $6,677,852, and we are projected to be at $6,565,560, resulting in a better than budget of $112,292. This will result in a projected carryover of $303,203. There is also a $50,000 that is being carried over from the 2022-2023. So it'll give us a total projected carryover of $353,203. I did want to point out under the expenses for the 2024-2025 budget, you'll see that for the reserve funding, we're putting in $499,454. Based on the current existing reserve study, the contribution was projected to be at $847,454, but $348,000 of that was reallocated to the purchase of the Askin building as to not affect the 2024-2025 assessment amounts. Please remember that the carryover amount is based off of projections, and so this number will change once we have that audit. And the board does not officially designate carryover funds until the completion of that audit. So what makes up that carryover amount? We have unbudgeted revenue of about $122,498 projected. This is from revenue that is higher than anticipated. EC and patrol fines and violations, as well as other departments. We have an unbudgeted NRCS grant income of $48,175. This was awarded after the completion of the budget process, so it was not included in the budget. We have staff changes of $98,706. It's due to understaffing because there was positions that we could not fill. Reduced operating expenses of $33,824. The staff has been doing an amazing job of cost comparing on supplies and materials when they need to purchase items, as well as doing their due diligence on reviewing vendor invoicing. And then as you can see, the designated carryover from fiscal year 2022-2023 for that CHP officer of the $50,000, bringing us to that total of $353,203. So now what to do with this amount? As you can see, I have on here general insurance, property taxes, electric, water. These are areas that are very unpredictable. So we propose allocating carryover to these line items because if and when that audit does come in, and if it comes in less, we can pull from these items and not majorly affect our budget. You can see that we want to apply towards the 2024-2025 assessments $109,885. And as I said, we can't put that full $353,203 of carryover to the assessments. Because that is a projected number, if we were to do that and the audit comes back less, we risk putting our association into a deficit resulting in even higher assessment increases in the future to compensate for that. So looking at what contributed to this carryover, we are confident that we can put that $109,885 back into the assessments for the homeowners.
I'm going to just add, and that's going to be, directly a result of not, less of an increase that's the intent of this for this coming fiscal year.
So the 2024-2025 assessments. The original assessment amount as a whole was $5,780,116. So applying that carryover from the previous slide from the 2023-2024 projected carryover of $109,884, which will decrease the annual required assessment amount, the assessments come down to $5,670,232. So if you take that amount and divide it by our number of lots, our 2024-2025 homeowner annual assessment amount would be $1,961. And if you were wanting to break that down into a monthly payment, it's only $163.42. It's an increase of $33 from last year, which is a 2% increase.
And I also want to add here and reemphasize that $163.42. If you were to break it down into a monthly number, obviously we do annual assessments here, but again, even going back to 2022 numbers we had up there, those California and national averages, we are still well below those numbers, going all the way back from 2022.
So how is your assessments being allocated? Here's a pie chart showing your assessments being allocated to different departments. I know it's kind of hard to see.
You
back
want to
there.
grab the mic?
Okay. Yeah, it'd be nice if I can have you guys hear me, huh? So as you can see, 26% is going to general and administrative. We have 16% going to maintenance operations, 9% to patrol. We have 2% going to food and beverage, just to kind of give you an idea so that you have a visual. Yeah. And so how do those percentages work out into actual dollars? So if you break it down into the actual dollars, as I had mentioned, the general administrative, $509.86 of your assessment. Maintenance operation, $313.76. Reserve funding, $176.49. Food and beverage, $39.22.
It doesn't fit in there very well.
Yeah. Whoops. Now I want to take you through the changes in each department. Admin, administrative and office, and association business. Admin office, increased revenue due to rental permit and transfer fees. Payroll increased due to that 3% and 10%, 3% wage, 10% medical increase that we spoke about earlier. Operating expenses, due to increased general insurance, medical contingency, property taxes. For the association business, increased revenue for the Condor ad income following trends from the past years. Decreased expenses due to anticipated improvements in our communications. Patrol and environmental control. For patrol, we increased revenue for the fine revenue. Payroll increased that 3% wage, 10% medical. Increased expenses, the increased vehicle expense to account for the vehicle maintenance, as well as the cost of the BSI license that patrol must carry, which is going to be about $900 due in October of '24. Environmental control, we increased revenue slightly. Payroll is increased due to that 3% wage, 10% medical. Increased expenses to account for the increase in costs in supplies. Maintenance operation and refuge recycling. Maintenance, decreased revenue. So what we did is we moved the RV storage to this department, which is why you see that decrease in revenue, because we have a few spots up there that are used by PMC. Payrolls decreased due to moving employees to other departments. Increased expenses allow for maintenance on some of that equipment that is getting older and is requiring more service. Bear deterrence due to the bears breaking in. Outside services for cost of fuel and oil for striping and asphalting to the roads. And to allow for more cinders to be purchased for the roads during those icy times. Refuge and recycling. Increased revenue due to the increase in recycling revenue. Payroll, the increase, that 3% wage, 10% medical, and staff moved to other departments. Decreased expenses, we removed the vehicle fuel expense from this department because there's no vehicle assigned to the department. Grains and grounds. One of the changes that we made was we combined the golf course maintenance, campground, parks and grounds departments together as one. So payroll decreased due to moving of staff. Increased expenses for things such as education and training, as well as fertilizer costs have increased and outside services to account for a cost increase in aeration of the greens. And I apologize if I said that wrong. Okay, good. As we had mentioned previously, we combined the Condor Cafe and the lounge into one department. We increased revenue for sales. Payroll increased due to that 3% wage, 10% medical. We expect a decrease in expenses. Our manager has been doing a great job finding ways to save money while maintaining the quality. And we also moved the entertainment budget from this department and moved it to recreation and events. The pro shop and clubhouse maintenance. For the pro shop, we expect revenue to be about the same. Payroll increased that 3% wage, 10% medical. Increased expenses to purchase more golf balls. Clubhouse maintenance. Payroll increased that 3% wage, 10% medical, and movement of staff. Increased expenses, as we had talked about previously, electric going up that anticipated 22 to 23%. Increased water due to looking at the trends from the past years of how things have been going. And increased outside services as well. Equestrian Center and the post office. Equestrian Center increased revenue due to the boarding and extra services revenue. Payroll, that increased for that 3% wage, 10% medical. And increased expenses, which is the hay cost. The transportation, our vendor charges us for bringing that hay into us. For the post office, we have increased revenue due to that contract that we have where we're picking up the mail from Fraser Park. Payroll increase to add for an additional part-time employee for some help, as well as that 3% wage, 10% medical. We have a decrease in expenses because we will no longer be paying rent on that building since we are purchasing it, but we did have to add a vehicle, so we do have vehicle expense and fuel expense for that department now. The pool and recreation events. For the pool, we anticipate revenue to stay about the same. Increased payroll, increased expenses due to supplies such as the chlorine and increased propane costs as well as training. Recreation and events. Revenues anticipated to be around the same. Payroll increased due to the 3% wage, 10% medical, as well as to budget for seasonal staff during May through October. And increased expense because, as I mentioned previously, we moved the entertainment budget from the food and beverage to here because to us the entertainment was more of a community event. Projects and reserve funding. So the revenue is the environmental conservation fire mitigation income. The operating projects, you will notice that $348,000 in the 2024-2025 budget. That is for the Askin building, also known as the post office. So other budgeted items. Assessments 2023-2024 budget was $5,574,812. For the 2024-2025 budget, $5,655,774, for an increase of $80,962. And for the reserve fund, the budget of in 2023-2024 was $706,212. For our proposed 2024-2025 budget, $499,454. And as I stated before, that's because the original carryover, or the original was going to be $847,454.
The reserve contribution, that's the word we're looking for.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for, thank you. That $348,000 for the purchase of the Askin building. And as we said, we did that because we did not want that purchase to impact your 2024-2025 assessment amounts. So our projected carryover for the 2023-2024, $303,203. So just to bring us full circle, the 2024-2025 homeowner annual assessment amount would be $1,961. And if you wanted to break that down into the monthly, $163.42. So an increase of $33 from last year, being a 2% increase. The reserve analysis as of 7/1/2024. So some key points that we wanted to bring out. As I had mentioned, original budget for the reserve funding was the $847,454, allocating $348,000 to the purchase of the Askin building. Physical reserve study audit to be performed by an accredited reserve study firm in the upcoming year, as we are required to do every 3 years. Annual review of the current study will incorporate missing components as well as the Askin building that we are purchasing. Structural integrity reports recommended every 5 to 10 years. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae require current reserve studies to provide a sufficient funding for lender requirements. This could be increased from 10% to 20 to 25% in the near future. And this would impact mortgages for new people coming in. A key for this is not when, but if these repairs or replacements are going to be needed. So we just want to make sure that we are prepared for what may come. So according to the reserve study analysis, on the start date of 7/1/2024, the reserve balance will be $4,205,337, and the fully funded reserve amount $9,646,352, which means on 7/1/2024, our reserve would be 44% funded.
Yeah, and I just want to add a couple things about both these last two slides, just to emphasize a few key points that Amber made. That coming up this summer, probably sometime July or August, I'm anticipating we're going to do a physical inventory of all of the components, all that the association is responsible for, as part of your annual assessments going into the reserve study. Actually, California law requires that every 3 years a physical inventory is taken. So we're at that threshold, we're at that mark. So we're going to be doing that study this summer. And based on what I've seen so far since I've been here, Amber also mentioned some missing components. I've discovered some. And I suspect there are more that we'll discover in this physical study coming up this summer. The result of that is going to be, I'm anticipating, and so this is forward-looking, probably into not this coming fiscal year, but the following fiscal year. That number that Amber's mentioned a couple times, we were projected to contribute $847,454 this coming year. We dropped that down because we borrowed from reserves to purchase the Askin building, as you all probably know, and that number was $348,000. But my point here is that I think that projected number of 847,000 that we should have contributed to reserves this coming year and are not, those numbers in addition to this physical inventory that we're going to be taking this summer, I think we're going to need to, I'm projecting out the future year into the 25-26 budget. Just, I'm kind of giving you a heads up. Anticipate we're going to probably need to put a pretty significantly greater amount into reserves. We'll see. That's just my projection at this point. Hard to say for sure. And I also want to emphasize a point that Amber made. She talked about Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. That's based on information I just received last week. I attend an annual law seminar. I actually attend a couple of them a year. Not only do they keep me current in my certifications as an association manager, but I learn a lot. And it was brought to my attention in one of the presentations I attended that a lot of associations, not necessarily us here, but are at risk when they're extremely underfunded in their reserves. People wanting to buy into that association may not even be able to get a loan on their home that they're trying to buy, their condo or their home, because that association hasn't done its fiduciary responsibility to keep the reserves funded. We have an obligation to keep these funded. We're doing okay based on this 44% funding that we are projecting, but we shall see. So I just want to emphasize those a couple points for you.
Thank you. Okay, and so that concludes our presentation for the 2024-2025 projected budget. I want to thank you all for coming and viewing online. I will now turn it over to Chairman Lewis for the board discussion, followed by questions and answers pertaining to this budget proposal. Thank you.
We're going to move a few things around here and before we can continue on.
you have?
Yeah.
First when I looked at the we're putting these resolutions today, like putting them in. I go, oh, okay, that's fine.
I guess we just have principal meetings.
Oh, just technicality.
So that's what, yeah, that's what it is.
Somebody has to explain to me where it shows the actual contract. I want to see that. I thought it was part of the 499, which was putting in. It has to be part of the 499.
No, it's not.
Then how are we putting it back in the year?
Mark?
Yeah, I know. It's easy. Eyes glazed.
Projected income that only covers expenses.
Okay, we're going to get back started here. Thanks to Amber and Todd for that presentation. So, and how we're going to format this now is that we are going to have board discussion regarding the budget, and after that, we'll open it up to the members. And it does say questions and answers on the agenda here. If we can answer something, we will, and if not, then we will hold off until probably the next board meeting, because at our next board meeting, next Saturday, we will have a discussion again about the budget, and that will work our way to the April meeting where the budget will be approved. And you saw the timeline that Amber shared with us about how we proceed with this process. So, having said that, let me open it up to directors for any questions of Todd and Amber or comments regarding the budget. And if you don't mind, if we can go around, do you have, starting with you, Mark, is it?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank Amber for that presentation. A couple of things stuck out to me, just kind of like just because we've always done things in the past doesn't mean we should do the same things in the future. I noticed, I think there was about a $220,000 loss projected in the Equestrian Center this year, which I think is kind of outrageous, and I'll say the quiet part out loud. I'm wondering what kind of oversight we have on this equestrian center, since we don't have an equestrian center committee anymore. And 220 is a huge chunk. I think it's about $75 a person. And as we know, a lot of people are hurting right now. And there's a lot of things going on in the equestrian center. I'm not such as who actually owns those horses. It would be nice if we had a list of the actual owners of the horses, because we have a manager there that I'm not sure if is managing the equestrian center or is managing a non-profit, because a form is being submitted to the IRS that our equestrian manager is flagging 40 hours a week for the non-profit, and I don't know how someone can do 40 hours a week for a non-profit while selling bunnies and also running the equestrian center at a loss of $200,000. I would like to see it cost neutral, and if we can't, I would recommend clean house and get it done. Also, the transparency. I wonder what's coming out the reserve accounts, such as the stealth RCS meetings. Is that money coming from reserves? I know we've had probably about $750,000 that's gone into a project that we haven't yet approved with plans and what have you. And we've only got, I think it was week 13 of these weekly meetings that we don't see any finances on, the board doesn't, which we should. It shouldn't be secret and stealth. And it should be out in the open. We should get minutes and we should have the actual numbers. Let's see what else. Bill, can we comment again once we go round, or we just all one time?
We'll go around once, we'll go out to the members, and then we can come back.
Excellent, thank you. The other thing I'd like to say, and I realize that the procedure isn't going to come to any kind of conclusion next week, but I wish we got the line items before today so we could actually make a proper analysis. I feel kind of hamstrung, and I don't want to say something that if I see the line items later, it's going to make me look stupid. I'm pretty good at that myself without this. And that'll do it for right now. I'd like to say something else after I hear from the members. Thank you.
Good morning. Talk loud.
I'll speak loud. Two things regarding stealth meetings. Those meetings are being conducted by the project manager as part of his responsibilities. It is not an association thing. We participate, but those meetings are his.
But do we pay for them?
I don't believe we do. But, and regarding line items, this budget was being in process up until last night. And so we don't generally share it until this meeting, and that's why, again, we're not making decisions about these items. It'll give you time for next week, and obviously before the April meeting to go through that. And that's why, again, it's a very fluid process. Changes have been made, and that's why you didn't get it until today. And that has been the process for the last 6 years.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Just a question for Todd. We mentioned about maybe hiring a communications manager, since, especially since for example, we didn't get a notification of the YouTube video going out until last night at 6:30. So I know we have concerns about our communications protocols, and I'm just wondering if we have budgeted to get someone to do communications.
Yes, that has been
So that's
incorporated in
included?
here. Yeah, it's obviously, well, it's been obvious, it's a great need of ours, so yes, we've allowed for that and looked at salary ranges, what we would expect to have to pay to hire that. But that is about as far as I've gotten in the hiring process.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we have it, some kind of it built in to your budget.
Yes, it is in there.
Okay. Then I had a similar question regarding the equestrian center. I know that at this point I haven't seen a draft of the new fees for the upcoming years, I think. Have I seen the fee? I've seen the fines. Oh, it's in my board packet today. Okay, good. Well, there you go. Well, that's why. Okay, because it's on a USB drive in my packet here. Okay, so the point being that I think we need to take a hard look at some of these fees and make sure that we could try to get closer to compensation that is comparable to the market. For example, our horse boarding fees, are they comparable? I tried to send an email recently to an equestrian boarding company down in Fraser Park, and they failed to respond to provide me any estimates. In fact, I emailed 2 of them, and neither one responded to me. So I don't know if it takes stealth running out to those locations and saying, hey, I got a horse I want to board with you. How much does it cost? Because I don't know how else we're going to get some more closer estimates. I know we're not intended to be a for-profit organization, as Mark pointed out. We want to make sure, though, that we at least get close, and right now we're not close. The other thing I want to confirm, if we can, I know you won't be able to answer this in this moment, but I would like to know how many horses that we do have that are actually boarded member horses versus, since of course Lori does have a charity she's working for, how many of these horses are being boarded? I just want to make sure they aren't any charity horses that are boarding here, because that prevents us from boarding our horses. And if for some reason, I mean, I'm okay with the fact there might be charity horses here, as long as they don't prevent our members from getting a spot. So I just want to make sure those things are covered. I want to make sure that, is it clearly identified, if we do have charity horses here, that the feed is being calculated correctly for those horses, and that there's a strict accounting process in place. So this is kind of towards Amber, that she provides some kind of a breakdown each month of how much each horse is getting, so that we're making sure that the right horses are getting their food and that they're paying the fees correctly. So it's just more of a hope that that's something that we could do. Maybe we're not doing it now. Then, let me see, I think I had just a couple more questions, and then I'll be free to move on. I got lots of notes on here, hold on. I think we all had the same question about, a few of us had the same question about, we were discussing how we're gonna pay back the loan, because I know we have to, if we're taking it out of reserves, we have to pay it back, but in this case, we're not really taking it out of reserves to pay for the post office. We're more of just reducing the amount that we're collecting to fund the reserves, right?
So, yeah, we tried to explain that in the last open board meeting, but let's, I'll go through it again.
It doesn't hurt to
So,
read.
yeah, in one sense, it's, pulling from Peter to pay Paul. But,
Yeah.
and so the process is that, we're very close to closing escrow on that building, and at that point, that money will come from reserves to make that final payment to actually own that building. We're not there yet, but we're very close. And so that money will come from from reserves. And by legal obligation, we are allowed to borrow from our own reserves, which again, as I've mentioned before, that prevents us from a bank loan, which would include interest. We're not going to be paying ourselves interest. So we're borrowing money. The actual cost of that building is $348,000, but we established a not to exceed of $348 to allow for closing costs and that sort of thing. Also, so the way the actual repayment will take place is once we're into this coming fiscal year, and because we do annual assessments versus monthly, we'll be able to pay that loan back in one lump sum. And that will be the plan. We will pay that loan back from reserves. But we promised the membership months ago when this was first discussed that we were not going to increase this coming year's assessments by buying this building. And that's something that Amber and I tried to emphasize. That's not, but to compensate for not increasing dues, assessments, we're not contributing as much as projected for this coming year's reserve contribution. We've reduced that, what we should be contributing to reserves this coming fiscal year, we dropped that down about $348,000 against what we should be contributing in the coming year. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
and then the follow-up question is, what is the percentage that we must contribute?
There is no, in California, there is no percentage. There's only 2 states in the United States that actually have a percentage, and it's debatable. We mentioned a 10% number. That's kind of you could call that a benchmark, an industry standard. You want to, contribute a minimum of 10% per year, but that's even debatable. I mentioned Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac and those guys. The trend is going upward, but to set a benchmark is not really ideal because every single association is different. An association who's extremely underfunded, 10% annual contribution is nowhere near enough
What it
if
should
your
be,
association
if
is
you're
underfunded.
Yeah.
So there's so many variables. So I don't anticipate California or most other states to set any threshold.
Okay.
I don't think we'll see that happening.
So, and in your comment, you mentioned that we will probably drop, even though we plan to put more towards reserves next year, we'll probably drop that 44% down because of the reserve study. More, your best guess, I hear you.
Yes.
So, but do you foresee that it could drop below 25% since that's what they're anticipating Fannie Mac and such need?
I don't think we'll go down that low.
Okay.
I don't.
right.
That's my ballpark estimation, but no, I don't think so.
All right. I think I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
I thought it was a great presentation. I thought it was very clear, was very thorough, and I completely understood it. So thank you, Amber and Todd.
I as well thought it was a good presentation. I do have a couple of questions for either Amber and or Todd. Amber, you mentioned that we have a potential $300,000 carryover. Where's Amber?
She's in the audience.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
And that we are using roughly 100,000 of it to offset assessments this year. Once we get to the audit and we find out how much there really is, let's assume there still is 300,000. What happens to the other 200,000?
She had it listed here.
So are you talking about, so if the audit comes back and we have less than that?
No, I'm saying you're applying. You're saying we're going to take as I understand it, and then if I'm wrong, please correct me. That you said we're anticipating a $300,000 carryover from this year, and we're using 100,000, 109,000 of that to offset assessments. So let's assume we get to the audit in October, whatever that is, and there really is $300,000 carryover. What do we do with it? Where does the other $200,000 go?
So that was the slide that I had where I wanted to put it in line items that are very unpredictable. Our general insurance, we did the electric, water, property taxes. So line items that are very unpredictable and varied, we put the money there. So it's allocated to that, but if the audit comes back less, we're able to pull from those without majorly impacting our revenue.
So you're taking the 109,000 and applying it to those particular items you just mentioned?
The 109,000 is going back towards the assessment.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is going allocated towards general insurance, property taxes,
And-
electric, water.
And what happens if we don't use it for that amount, let's, what happens if we don't use that 200,000 for those items, Todd? What do we do with that?
Well, Richard, that would be no different than any other year where you're just, you as a board, well, the board of members at that time will determine what that, once we get that audit done and know that real number, you'll decide.
Okay.
You know, there'll be proposals of what to do with that money. And some of it could certainly be held back for the following year's budget or designated for
Okay.
as you determine.
That's,
Line items I was putting is just a suggestion of
Yeah.
where it would benefit us.
I-
But ultimately, you guys will have the decision, once we get that audit and that final number, that's when you guys will have the decision.
okay.
what action.
That's the answer I wanted to get. One final question about that. How did we determine 109,000 out of the 300,000? How did we calculate that number?
Do you want to answer that? Or do you want me to? Yeah, well, it was there were very variable things. I don't have that slide right up here in front of me, but we had
I understand. I want to know. I understand what you've done, but I want to know, how did you figure out that you were going to take 109,000 and use it toward assessments?
Look at that too, because looking at what did that carryover, a lot of it is unbudgeted revenue, which we know that is going to be something that we are gonna have as a carryover. And so with having that in mind, we know that we're safe to do about 109,000 without putting us to where it could put us in errors when the audit comes back. So looking at, we had the 48,000 because of the grant, 122,000, but we didn't want to take that number too high, just to keep us, we wanted to be conservative with that number.
Okay, so I guess my question is that, I mean, we didn't have some sort of a a calculation. We looked at what we thought we were going to be able to use it for and used a conservative number, rather than saying, no, we're going to take 200,000 and apply it towards the assessment.
Yeah, there's no formula necessarily for that. It's like any other budget. You're trying to figure out, make your best guesses, and so that's part of what we're doing.
And it's also subtraction. We took what that amount was going to be, what we projected it to be. We then included the items that she wanted to include for the variables, and at the end of the day, that was 109,000 left over.
That makes sense. Okay. One final question for you, Todd, and I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but I'd like for you to address it for the board and the membership. When we're buying the post office building, and I saw in the budget that we are taking out the rental that we're going to be paying this next year, but I didn't see anything in there where we might generate income by renting out the top 3 offices. Was that not considered in the budget at all?
It was not, and I think just taking a conservative stance, we may or may not rent out those remaining open facilities. So, that's a decision that yet to be made for the board. So just from a conservative standpoint, no, we did not incorporate any additional revenue. We didn't want to make that assumption. But we've got, as Amber mentioned there'll be further there'll be further discussion, and that could be a number that the board tells us, let's project some revenue there. We could do that.
So theoretically, there could be additional revenue that we haven't put into the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's very good. Okay. Thank you very much.
I really don't have any questions either. I've been working with Amber and Todd on this budget since the beginning, so I don't really have any questions. But I do want to say it was a great presentation. I think you did a really great job. And I think it was really easy to understand, and I think the 2 new charts that she created are really beneficial that show the inflationary rates and stuff. I think those really let people see how the history of the association assessments went, and which was actually pretty good. So anyway, thanks to Amber. I appreciate it.
I agree that the presentation was very clear, except one thing I wanted to ask. Where on paper does it actually show that we're paying back the $348,000? It sounds like we're putting in, we're going to deposit $499,000 into the reserve, but the $348 is not included in that. We're going to pay back $348 in addition to that. Is that right?
Yes, in the beginning of the fiscal year, once we get an annual windfall every July when people pay their assessments, and at that point we'll write that check from.
Okay, so when we projected our income and we projected our expenses, that puts the assessment at a certain rate. So if we take that $348,000 out of our projected income, I just wanted to know where you show that.
So the $348,000 is under our projects department.
Okay.
Speaking to the mic a little bit better.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay.
I can hear you, but some of the people online can't.
Okay, I see it here.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I have it listed there. So the contribution was supposed to be the $800,000. So what we
Yes.
did is we're still basically having that number. We're just splitting it to where now only $499 is reserves. The rest of it is going towards the $348 for the Aspen building.
Oh, okay, so I see if that's in that as a project, that's in there as an expense on
Yes.
next year's budget.
Correct.
Okay, that's where I wanted to see that. So that makes sense, that, when we get the windfall at the beginning of the year, we have the cash, we're going to put that back into the reserve. We're going to put the so that is a wash. We took it out, we're putting it in.
Right.
$499 to put in that's done, that's a wash. The $499 is a very low amount to put into the reserve.
It is.
And our reserve rate right now at 44% is low. I know we don't want to show that that the purchase of the post office has caused an increase in assessments, and in my opinion, it hasn't. But, and I know some people, I'm not too sure, I'm not going to poll everybody, some people want the optics to be that our assessment is not going over $2,000, because when people see that too on their bill, some people will not like that. Just psychologically, it looks worse. You can charge $1.99 for something, and people think of it as $1 or something, and it's really $2. So I know the optics for that. But I know, and I think all of us know right now, that a $33 increase in the assessment is too low, and it will have to be compensated by either next year or the year after, and we'll have a jump. We do that all the time. It's like we keep, people complain, so we keep it low, low, and then it has a big jump. If we could squeeze out another $90,000 to put into the reserve because it's so low, that would be another $30 per lot, and we would be at $1,991. And I would love to see that. We'll still be under 2,000. It'd be another $30 per lot, and we'd still be under 2,000, and we'd have $90,000 more to put in the reserve. So that's my suggestion. That's all. Do you have a question for me?
No, I just, in case next person needed me, I didn't know if you guys were.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but again, thank you both. I know how much work you've been putting into this outside of regular hours and such, so thank you both.
I've got several issues. This seems to be a giant love fest here. I want to kind of, this seems to be. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I have several comments, and this seems to be kind of a love fest here. The $33 is way too low. We're going to end up having to raise this 5 times that amount next year to catch up. And I'd rather spread the pain out and do a $50 or $60 increase this year, and then do a $50 the following year. A few years ago when they approved the budget and we didn't raise the rates, so we raised them like $13 or $25. Then the next year we had to raise it $178 for the year, 5 times the amount of the previous year. And I just think spreading the pain out over 2 or 3 years would be much more prudent than socking people with a huge bill the following year. And our reserves are way underfunded, and yes, technically, we're using the reserves to pay for this building, and I know we promised not to raise the assessments, but the assessments need to be, but the amount going into the reserve fund needs to go up. And $400,000 is not nearly enough. It's going to drop us probably in the 35% range. And I just think we need to raise this to just be financially prudent, to raise the amount of money we're putting into the reserve fund. It's not like a fun and games thing. It's a real serious fund that we use for real projects, and it's silly to be underfunded. And we had a plan. We had a previous plan in place over a 10-year period that would get us funded up to, I think, was it 65% or 70% over a certain amount of period of time?
Over 30 years, it was 100%, and it is 100% the way Amber created it.
So we're still on target to better fund it, but that's over 30 years.
Right.
But over the next 5 years, we're still going to be very underfunded. So I know, look, I'm termed out after next year, so I can be honest here, okay? I know everyone's concerned about being reelected. I don't have to be worried about reelection, but I can be honest. I think, yeah, I don't have to be, I'm done after next year. So I can be honest, I think that we're not being financially prudent here in only raising it $33. I just think the main, oh, and we didn't even talk about fire mitigation. I don't see fire mitigation in here anywhere. Is there fire mitigation in here anywhere?
You mentioned it.
No, but that was for a grant. It's not, we're not paying for that.
Well, the grants cover roughly 50% of our cost, and yes, it is the other 50% again, roughly, is in the budget. It's actually more of a reserve.
But how much
item.
is that?
So
How much are we spending on our own for fire mitigation?
I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Because I think we really need to be way more aggressive in our fire mitigation. If it's 50,000, it should be 150,000. There's places on Woodland that when the summer hits and all that brush becomes dry, if that goes up, that's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, bear in mind, Philip, also that the fire mitigation we are doing is on a rotation. You know, it's not we're not getting the whole thing, all the green belts done in one year.
We don't
It's
need
a-
to, but
yeah.
I think we need to be more aggressive in our pursuit of fire. We need to be way more aggressive in our fire mitigation, because whether we're spending $19.99 for our assessments or $2,030, if we don't have homes to pay for those, then we're screwed. Okay. The other thing is the Equestrian Center is technically an amenity. It's in CC&Rs, and I get that we have to have it. But it seems if we're going to operate a $200,000 loss, that needs to be looked at very closely. So why are we losing that kind of money on the Equestrian Center? I think it's a great amenity. I think they're doing great stuff over there, and it's a wonderful facility. But why the heck are we losing that kind of money? I think we need to maybe have a subgroup to figure out how can we lower that operating loss. Because in the CC&Rs, it doesn't say that we have to fund it. Something's losing that much money. Something's wrong. And I want to figure out why we're losing so much money on that, and where can we go to kind of stem that. But obviously, since it's an amenity, we have to contribute to it as an association because it's in our CC&Rs. But that seems like a huge loss for us to absorb on that. I think that needs to be looked at much more closely. So those are the fire mitigation, the Equestrian Center, and our reserves are my main concern. And I will not approve a budget that only calls for a $30 increase.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to open it up to members who wish to comment or ask questions. And again, remember, your answers may not be answered, just like some of the questions that have been asked by the board. We'll need some research to be done, and we'll come back probably next month to answer those questions. So, Randall?
Morning.
Morning.
Amber? Hi. Randall Gates. Mike? There we go. There we go. I'll try to keep it quick here. I just want to start with the reserve, and I know I've already informed the board on my position on some of this, that and I only go to the past when it's relevant to the present. I really would rather not, but when this was approved, when the building and the pool were added to the reserve, as Chairman Gertner announced in March, which you're all aware of, it dropped the funded rate from 88% to 42% in one day. As I've shared with you, there are no minutes of any budget and finance, open or executive meetings of the board, no resolutions on something that, in my opinion, had a material impact on the finances of the POA. I've looked at it. I know it's been 2 years since we've had an independent consultant look at the reserve report. I believe there are items in there that don't belong in there. Remodel costs are not components with a useful life. It can be calculated and funded. I strongly suggest we get a very comprehensive reserve analyst to go through this. We're talking about, a lot of directors here are talking about how significant this underfunded rate is. Let's make sure it's correct. We had, for both the pool and the clubhouse, all the components were already in the reserve. At the time, Chairman Gutner added the remodel costs to the reserve report, taking us again from 88 to 42% in a heartbeat, without a discussion. At least I'm unaware of any minutes or any resolutions saying we've looked at the financial consequences, we've looked at the precedent, why we're changing
something that was in place since the beginning of the association. There was a reason the bones of the building weren't put in. They were over 30 years, they still are. Again, the answer is what it is. I just don't believe it was properly discussed and allowed input in. And I think something that material should be formalized as a resolution and voted on by the board, not just what Chairman Gutner did at the time was announce it in the Condor. Now, if I'm missing any information, that's why I've shared this with you before. If there is some approval I'm not aware of, but it seems there should have been more public discussion over something this critical, because I'm hearing from the directors, you know, they want to increase the funded rate. Well, possibly we have items in there that are quite material that don't need to be there. As far as the post office, I'm not for, I think it's probably a great idea. I do have one question, Amber. Is depreciation go into the amenity budget, or is that in administrative? Because we bought a building, we're saving on rent, but we should be depreciating that asset somewhere, correct? Okay, no, that's fine. I just, you don't, again, I've had issues, I have some issues on how well we allocate expenses directly related to an amenity, so that we can properly look at a budget and say, okay, this is what it's costing. I know one of the items was equestrian center insurance, equine insurance for the horses, that I believe is within insurance and administrative. And I think that, like the Condor Cafe, I think a lot of the propane and other costs, again, it was just a general thought, is if we can take things out of administrative, whether they're insurance, overhead, or I think I even looked at water for the golf course. It just seems like we might want to focus on how to move things to where we could have more certainty that we're looking at the actual costs. Yeah. So again, depreciation. But again, I'm not, take 5 minutes, no hurry. The post office is above, my concern, I understand, Todd, what you were saying. By reducing our annual allocation to the reserves,
yes,
we are in fact paying for that post office out of operating funds. We have two limits on increases in assessments. One is for operations, and the other is for capital additions. This is a capital addition. This is a hard asset. It's over 5% of the expenses in the annual budget. In my mind, we need to find a way to follow the rules. We're not supposed to, without member approval, take money out of the general assessment, which is an operating source, for something that isn't an operating expense. And I understand we removed a reserve and we put it over there, but the bottom line, we're paying for it out of the operations budget, not having a special assessment budget, which I admit is more cumbersome because you have to then get the members to approve. But I mean, it could put on the ballot for June, I think, economically. But I think I've shared that with you before. I just want to point it out. And last but not least, this seems rushed, the whole process, not just 8 a.m. on a Saturday. And I was looking back at 10.03, the budget formation bylaw, that every year you don't get enough votes to approve it, and then every July, the directors then reapprove this timeline where we used to have till June, and now we have till April. The whole thing seems to have been compressed to where we're not taking the time to just, even another month would be great. Instead of, we got April, we have a week till the next board meeting, and then we have 1 month until you're going to vote. If someone wanted to get something on that agenda, it's going to show up on the same agenda that you're going to be voting for the budget. So I guess my recommendation is, since 10.3 never gets approved by the members, maybe we could add a little cushion here so we don't all feel so rushed trying to intelligently look at what's going on. So, other than that, great presentation, Amber, and all, thank you. Oh, unless you have any comments?
No, I'll wait till.
Okay.
Good morning. My name's Paul Mobley. I'm a member for the POA since about 5 years now. This is the first time I've really attended a draft budget proposal. This morning I sent out some comments for the board members to look at and Todd to look at. I was just a few quick questions above and beyond those comments that I sent out this morning.
I haven't seen them yet, just so you know.
I understand.
Yeah.
Again, this is a draft meeting, it's a discussion, it's an ongoing process by which we can improve our amenities, maintain them, and keep the safety at a high standard. It does take money to do that. We are purchasing a post office this year, yet I haven't seen any intent towards any divestiture of amenities as we acquire more assets. So in many corporations, they overbuild, they go beyond their scope of their initial planning, things change, and typical divestitures happen at a very inopportune time when things are going bad. I would take this opportunity to look at these underperforming amenities. Mark and Jennifer had mentioned in particular the Equestrian Center. In my email, I mentioned the golf course. Budgets have to be managed by everyone in this room. Everyone here is typically a member. The reason I point out these things is because these are unspoken things in these meetings. Last year, I put up solar panels to reduce my expenses associated with electricity. I saw that the expense would be going up, and last meeting, I warned the board that Southern California Edison is increasing the rates, and you guys included that in your budget. Thank you. Yet, I can power my electric bike with a motor I purchased for $1,500 and ride the trails around here, and I'm not asking anyone to subsidize my bicycle to enjoy this community at $1,500, and I'm paying for the electricity myself. The overage on 30 horses for $220,000 is about $7,500 a horse. That is irresponsible. Everyone knows that. Everyone in the community knows that. And we should stop funding pet projects for a few. Every amenity has a minority interest. When the amenity of the minorities is a tyrant to the majority, we need to look at that very closely. This equestrian center needs to pay for itself, period. If it can't, it needs to be divested. I worked at Motorola from the 1980s to the 1990s. They grew too large. They split off many corporations to do so. This company is getting too large. The Equestrian Center is an example. There are other examples that need to be looked at through this year. Todd, I would say, you and I have had a discussion on these items. Amber, great presentation. That was awesome. The numbers are there. The visibility is there. You're not trying to hide anything, so thank you. But what you do when you quote assessments comparing to LA, San Francisco is, as you said, Todd, apples and oranges. Comparing boarding rates to a boarding house in Scottsdale, Arizona, or Del Mar Racetrack would be inappropriate. They're not the same. You can look at the boarding rates for equestrian centers in Bakersfield Chandler, Arizona, various different places to be a comparative analysis. But I would say most residents are worried about fire safety. I had an email sent out about fire safety, and I'll follow up with that later. But let's focus on bringing the best safe community to all members, stop funding projects. As Phil Gabriel said, these budgets will need to be funded later. So Todd, let's do a comparison. Let's stop using averages of single-family homes. Let's use median. The difference between average and median is significant when you have overpriced associations included in an average, and the single-family home average across the nation will have a lot of different associations associated with it. The median is the right number to use. Thank you.
Good morning. He's just got to be 5% smarter than the microphone. Bob Wyant, 3405-197. We certainly have ongoing discussions about the amenities, and I know perhaps for the audience, that's streaming audience and whatever, that may not, be privy to that information. Personally, I've had conversations with many of the board members. There are plans in the works. Again, I want to say for the benefit of the audience that there's a lot of plans in the works to streamline amenities and improve efficiency. Our new manager seems to be very active in these departments. Those will figure back into the final budget when we're talking about, well, we're looking at 300, it might be 400, whatever. When you get the final numbers, you can do that. I would only ask at this point, since the budget isn't formalized, when you guys get it broken down to line items and you start looking at that, would you analyze, I can't say I'm unbiased as one of the fire safe inspectors and being actively involved in that program, but I would have to agree with Director Gabriel that our community fire funding needs to be increased. Personally, as a member, if you're going to raise my assessments, which is inevitable, just a simple 3% cost of living, I don't know I don't understand all the CPIs and all that stuff that Amber and Randall and everybody does. I get about halfway through their summaries, and that's where you lose me. But personally, as a member, if you're going to raise my assessment, I know it's unavoidable, but I would like to see, naturally, ongoing discussions of streamlining amenities and making them more self-sufficient and everything. I don't use any of the amenities. I don't swim in the pool. I don't keep horses anymore. I've been horse poor. I don't want to do that again. But I'll tell you, I think they add an incredible amount of value and enjoyment to our community. And when I go for a walk in the morning and I hear people playing pickleball, laughing and joking, or I see some of us old farts over on the bocce court, or, any of the amenities. I think they're just a tremendous asset. Of course, we can streamline them and look at them more efficiently. But again, personally, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but if you're going to raise my assessment, I want fire prevention, and I want our employees to have a decent living wage. I feel and I know we're trying to be efficient and keep costs down. And I also have been an employer in the past, and I understand the associated costs. We've got insurance, we've got Social Security, we got matching contributions, all of that. But we got to pay these people, man. You can't pay these people $15 an hour. That's ridiculous. Not expect any loyalty or any performance level out of them. So if you're going to raise my assessments, I don't mind kicking in another $20 a year so these people can make ends meet. Because I'm out here on the other side of the fence every day with our people doing community service, whatever, hauling firewood, patching roofs, whatever we can do for these people. And I see the effect of it. And we got to increase our employees' wage. That's one of my priorities. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Amber, Todd, nice work. Really appreciate everything you've been doing. I do have a couple questions here. I see that every year thus far, we do have monies that are not spent, that we've been able to save through whatever process of saving, whether it be employee hours, saving on the budget maybe. And yet, you're still asking for more from the members. Even though every year you're showing that we have extra money, you're still asking for more. And I get that we are lower than the national average, but we are still a community that is based on what our needs are, not what the rest of the state needs are. So for me, every dollar you increase means that that's a dollar out of somebody who might not be able to pay for their medical, might not be able to pay for their prescription, might not be able to pay for their food. We have to keep that in perspective. And we're a corporation that's nonprofit, and at the end of the year, we're supposed to show a net zero profit. This is not happening here. And we have got to figure out ways of saving money, like the equestrian center, like our food service, like the golf course, raising up the fees to offset the costs. That's where we should be looking at. And this idea of more money coming from the members, another $30 on top of the 33 that you're asking for, like Philip would like to see towards our reserve. I get that we need more in our reserve, but if we have a proper understanding of what our assets are and knowing what needs to be put in and put out, we've already shown that 88% was there for a reserve. Now it's down to 42% by the strike of a pen. Those things need to be addressed. They really do. Because I don't think that, even Bill Lewis has said the bones in this clubhouse are good. Why do we have the bones of the clubhouse in the reserve report? It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. I'm not understanding, because we're not going to tear down this building to rebuild the building. So things have got to change on that level. Next thing I have to ask is, and of course everybody's been saying it, the equestrian center seems to be a thorn in everybody's side, and I personally, I love the equestrian center. I think it's a valuable asset to us. I think it could be utilized better. I think that we could be able to get maybe a 4-H club or something of that nature in there, so the kids can also enjoy it and get education from it. But if we have an employee who's a manager getting paid 40 hours a week as a nonprofit, or, do I get a tax break on that? No. Does the clubhouse get a tax break on those hours? No. So why are we subsidizing something like that? It does not make sense to me. So again, Todd, great job. Amber, thank you very much. I really appreciated it. I will have much more to say in the future, as you all know. So enjoy and have a beautiful weekend. Thank you.
Okay, any other members? All right, let's return to any additional comments or questions by the board. Mark, did you want to start there?
Sure, I'll go first. Thank you, members, for the comments. I just scribbled down a few notes. And also thank you, Richard, about the generating income. I missed that one, but yeah, with the post office building. Well, what I'd like to say is let's do something regarding the members' wants. I think we should address what we've discussed as far as the equestrian centre. Why are we spending money on a non-approved project. The carryover funds, which I saw was probably going to be $353,000, including the extra 50K. I believe, according to 1010, that should be carried over to the following year's budget. And don't raise the assessments this year. Let's manage this. As directors, we need to actually manage the association and not treat our members as a blank check. I'm not talking about reducing the strength and solvency of the association, but actually acting in a responsible manner and providing leadership to correct our losses. It can be done, it should be done. We do it at our houses all the time, and we should not just look as the members as, okay, let's just ask for another 220,000 here, or however much we're paying for projects that have not been approved with secret meetings. I say do not raise the assessments. Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a question again about if we look at the budget of $5,860,000, that's our proposed budget, and if we purchase the building for $348,000 in our operating expenses, I agree that I think that does qualify for the 5% threshold to require a vote. And I think we need to dive into that a little bit or more to make sure that we are not causing a problem here with civil code. Because the way I see it is $348,000 coming out of operating. And I think we have to take a vote that, quite honestly, I think most people agree that purchasing the building was probably a wise move. So I don't think it hurts us, and I know it costs money, but that's not the point. The point is that we have to get their buy-in to buy a building out of our operating fund. Thank you.
Well, one, the building's been bought, so, but it's still worth, I guess, looking into for future. I just want to say about the carryover, I don't believe it's going to be $350,000. And because I've been working on these budgets for quite a few years now, and I don't believe it. So they can't use all of that money towards the assessments because they don't know if that's real money yet. They still have, a few months to go in this year. And the expensive months, when you get into spring is when you start spending money. So I think they did the right thing of setting the money to the side, placing it somewhere, and taking what they know is hard numbers. The $109,000 is a hard number, and that they can give back to the members. That works out pretty great. Because if come October, when we get the results of the audit and that $350,000 isn't there, and it's really only, 185 or, 1 year we only had 25,000, although that was pretty obvious through the year. But so I think they did the right thing with the carryover. And my other suggestion is I always feel like, and I think it's the association community standard that carryover goes into the reserve study, because that's a really easy way to beef up your reserve without charging the members more. I mean, next year, because we can't plan to put carryover into the budget, into the reserve, we're going to have to just increase the amount we put in the reserve. So members are going to have to pay for that. So anyway, that's all I have to say. And that's it.
Okay. I wanted to address a couple things you said, Mark.
Sure.
One is that we should consider the members' wants. I really appreciate members bringing things to our attention, because it does make us think and look at things a new way, and members sometimes bring up things I haven't thought about, and some of them are very good ideas. I don't want to stop that. But when you talk about members' wants, 3,000 owners, well, more like 6,000, there's multiple names. on deeds. Members want different things. So which members are we going to represent? In my opinion, as a board for this corporation, we represent all of the members by upholding the governing documents. One thing all members have in common is that they own property here, and they've been given assurances that these are the things by law and by our governing documents that we are supposed to provide for you. That's what we have to do. And we can't, to say members' wants, you will never please every member, because every member wants different things. Personally, I want some things that are different than the CCNRs. But I live with trying to not violate the CCNRs, where personally I would like some things to be different, and they're not that much of a big deal. The bigger deal is, to me, to be a good citizen in this community and follow the CCNR. So that's why, to me, we can't please everyone. The other thing is, you know, you don't have to answer this now, but I would like you to mention one secret meeting, because I don't know of anybody, but let me finish first. When you talk about what we spent that's over 3%, Jennifer? 5%. You're referring to a special assessment? Is that what you're referring to?
5% of something bought out of the operating fund.
And what does that 5% have to do with? Maybe I'm ignorant of what that rule is.
5% would be $290,000.
No, but what does the 5% refer to? 5%?
I think Randall brought it up in the meeting that when he was talking about how when you use monies to purchase something out of an operating fund that's greater than 5%, normally you would have to do a special assessment and get a vote.
Right.
So yes, we bought it already.
Well,
and it's
okay,
too
let me-
late for that. But
yes.
my concern is
Let
how
me
we're
stop
paying
you there
for it.
then. Let me stop you there. We didn't have a special assessment. I think what somebody is doing is making apples to oranges. We didn't have a special assessment that's over 5%.
That's my point.
We don't need it.
If we spend 5% of our operating budget to purchase something, that's usually considered a special assessment, and you would get a vote on it.
No, yes.
Can I just say something
Yes,
really
yeah,
quick?
please.
If you
I
take.
know we're
all-
not doing it.
If you
That's the
take
point.
all of our revenue, it's $6,934,819. 5% of that is $350,000.
I'm looking at the the revenue, you're supposed
That
to
is
do
revenue.
5%. Well,
That's our
They're saying
revenue.
it's based on operating expenses.
Okay, let's,
Okay, so
Every time.
we're not talking, okay, we did not have a special assessment that's over 5%. We didn't have a special assessment at all, and that's just my comment. When we have the carryovers, I don't like to pad a budget. I never did when I created budgets. I like to get them really close. That was my challenging myself to try to get budgets really close to what we were going to spend when I worked. But in this case, since we have so much fluctuation in employees, the employees that we need, we can't get, we have to put things in the budget. And it's not just their income, it's also the cost for full-time benefits too. So there's a lot of money associated with hiring a full-time person that we don't get. That's going to help make not a deficit, a carryover at the end of the year. But when we are required to apply that carryover, and especially now to reduce the assessment, then we're giving it back. We're essentially giving it back to the next year's budget and to the next year's amount people have to pay. And you're right, it was just a few years ago when we were on the board, our carryover is like 25,000. So what would happen if we budgeted so close that we had a deficit and we had to send out a bill to everybody or something? I mean, of course, we wouldn't do that. That's so expensive to do just in itself. But we are required to do something with that carryover, and we do which generally goes back to all the members anyway. So that's my comments.
May I respond?
Well, if, we're going to look into this.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we'll
I
question
appreciate
it's
that.
right here in front, we're going to look into it.
Thank you. That's all I want. That's all I asked Todd to do, was research that we're not doing something we shouldn't be doing.
And we'll be doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things. I think sometimes time fades our memory, and I think we've forgotten about Paradise since it happened over 3 years ago. And we've had a lot of rain and snow the past 2 years, but that has not reduced our fire risk. We have a tremendous amount of dead trees in our green belts that are overgrown. We need to increase our fire safety drastically. If it's 50,000, it should be 300,000. We probably have a couple $1 million worth of fire mitigation that needs to be done, and we can't all be done at one time. I'm very concerned about that. And the roads, I didn't notice in the slides, the budget for road repavement. Is that on one of the slides?
It's in there, I talked about, when I did their department, that was part of the increase for that department was, the stuff for the asphalting and striping.
Is that going to cover as many miles as it did last year?
Speaking with the managers, yes.
Okay, and let me just say this on behalf of the people who are listening online. If you want to step to the mic, or Todd can answer, so that, and just go back to answer his first question, please, so everybody can hear that.
Sorry, I apologize for that. Yes, so part of that was in the slide where I talked about the maintenance operations department and the increase in operating expenses due to asphalting and striping of the roads. From speaking to the managers, it's what they needed to be able to provide the same service they did currently for them to do next year, so it should cover all the roads.
Okay, all right. Okay, but last year, so what was the budget last year for the roads? Is it on?
Sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
I believe last year, the performer is 316 for current, and then previous year was 321, it looks like, and the budget for this year is 340.
Okay, I just want to make sure that for that 340, that we're going to get at least the same amount of miles covered, because.
Yeah, from what they said, yeah, and the reason for the increase is just the cost of the
Oh,
oil and
I don't-
the fuel, so that's just
yeah.
why they increased it, but it should,
Yeah,
yes,
I don't
the same.
dispute the increase. I just want to make sure that they were able to cover the same amount, because I don't know if you've been down to Fraser Park, but those roads are so gutted and potholed that you can't even drive down there. And I don't want our roads I want our roads to be in good shape all the way around, so. just
Yeah,
wanna
and
make sure.
speaking to the managers, that was a priority for them as well, to make sure that they were still able to maintain
Okay.
the roads for all the
And my
members.
last comment is that we can't divest the equestrian center. We can't divest the golf course. They're in our CCNRs. We're not a publicly or privately held company where we can just sell off assets. We can't. And unless someone makes a major wholesale change to CCNRs, we can't get rid of our golf course. We can't get rid of our transfer site. We can't get rid of the equestrian center. It's in our CCNRs. And so there's going to be a certain amount of money every year that's going to have to be spent on those. And it's not as simple as just say, okay, we don't want this anymore. Okay, let's get rid of it. We can't do it, period. That's it.
And just really briefly on the roads, they have a formula that they use, and each year there's a section that they will use to go out and do the roads. I don't know if it's 1/6 of the roads or 1/5, but they have a rotating basis.
I think it's 1/8.
1/8. And if there are other roads that require maintenance beyond that 1/8, they will address that as well.
That's fine.
So-
And that's beauty, and I just want to make sure we're getting that we're going to get our roads done properly.
Yes. Okay. Just a couple of comments, that I want to make here as we close this out is that the goal of this budget, as has been every budget, even before my time here, the goal is a zero balanced budget. We budget to break even. I guess you might say that we've been fortunate to have carryover, but carryover or anticipated carryover at the end of this budget is not being predicted. It could occur, it may not occur. We've seen the differences over the years, but the bottom line is it's a zero budget, balanced to expenses equal revenue. And that's the goal of this budget. If there becomes carryover, so be it. And that is eventually all returned to the members via the budget. It goes back to the budget instead of assessing individual things. Regarding the bylaw 1003 and those time limitations that are in there, those ones that get approved each year by the board are based on civil code. They're based on the law that requires those dates to be included. The reason it hasn't passed is because it requires, I believe, a 2/3 majority. And so each year it fails because it doesn't get that majority vote. And so we have to come back to comply with the law. We have to approve that because that's what's in our bylaws. Governing documents is currently looking at how we can make changes to that bylaw with the law restrictions without having member approval. And the law does provide for that. There are some additional things in that, the changes that are made each year, but those will be pulled out, and then just the date restrictions will be put back in, and Governing Docs is working on that. Regarding reserve funding increases, I do agree with Philip that we need to really strengthen our reserve funds, but I'm going to tell you this, each year when the board looks at increasing reserves, we look at what it's going to cost the members. And I've been in those discussions where, the increases have just been unfair, we believed. They've been too much. The year that, and I wasn't on the board, but the year that the board put zero into reserves, well, we've been trying to play catch up with that over the years as well. So to get to that 100%, if you take time to look at the reserve study analysis that's on our website to see what that projection increases could be that might come out of your pocket, you'll be hurt. You'll grimace and you'll say, oh my God, it's almost, in my opinion, in the next 30 years to achieve 100% would be extremely taxing on the members. And so we decide, to keep it where it is. And is that fiscally responsible for the association? It might not be. Is it fiscally responsible considering members who have to pay for it? I think it is. Lastly, regarding the no discussion regarding the addition of the clubhouse and pool into the reserve study, there was tremendous discussion about this. And Chairman Gertner did not arbitrarily put that into the reserve funds. I draw your attention to the budget presentation on March 9th, 2019, which the video of which is posted on our website, and you could go visit that. And I would encourage you to go to the 30-minute, 40-second mark on video number 2, where a slide similar to what you saw this morning was on there, and the title of that slide was Major Changes in Reserve Study. And there were bullet points underneath that. One of them was clubhouse and pool added to reserve study. The other bullet point said adding clubhouse and pool dropped the percentage of funding from 88% to 42%. After that slide and the presentation there was a discussion about adding these. And Chairman Gertner did an excellent job explaining the reason we were adding the clubhouse and the pool. The board of directors and others in attendance, and there was a lot of people in attendance at that meeting, spoke about the need to add the clubhouse and the pool. So to say there was no discussion, that's not true. Take a look. And at the next meeting on March 16th, 2019, There was a motion to approve that reserve study, which included the clubhouse and pool. It carried unanimously, and it became effective July 1, 2019. In subsequent years, on March 21st, 2020, there was a motion to approve the study, which included a change to the components of the clubhouse remodel design. That also passed unanimously. February 18th, 2023, another motion to approve the reserve analysis report that included the clubhouse and pool carried unanimously. And last month, at the open board meeting, there was a motion to approve the reserve analysis study, which passed unanimously. So clubhouse discussions, motions, it's in the minutes. There's video. Go take a look. And it shows that nothing was done on the sly. So again, you saw the presentation outline for the time frame. Again, excellent job, Amber, Todd, thank you very much. Thank you to the board. Thank you to members who are here. And we will have, again, a discussion at our next board meeting, next Saturday. And the board members now have line items. You can take a look at those. Any questions, I would recommend get referred to Todd about anything that we need to address. Okay?
Adjournment. In the February 17th, 2024 executive session, the following was discussed. Litigation, potential litigation 1, contracts 1, forbearance agreements 6, foreclosure requests 2 approved, APN 316-251-03001, 316-511-06005, hearings 14, personnel 0. The next regular open board meeting will take place on March 16th, 2024 at 10 a.m. in the Condor Room. I, Director Gilbert, want to adjourn this meeting.